Imagine for a moment that you are just standing in a beautifully designed, really modern European city. You're just going about your day. Maybe you're waiting for a tram.
Right. Just a normal commute.
Exactly. The streets are remarkably clean. The architecture is that perfect Dutch mix of historic 17th century charm and incredibly sleek modernity. People are commuting to their jobs. They're cycling past you on perfectly paved bike lanes.
Drinking their morning coffees.
Right. The entire scene is just this testament to order, civic planning, and, well, societal well-being.
A postcard, basically.
It is. And then right next to you, inside the glass shelter of the tram stop, someone casually pulls out a pipe, a lighter, and they just begin to smoke crack cocaine.
Right there.
Broad daylight. In front of commuters, in front of anyone who happens to be looking.
It's jarring.
It completely shatters the illusion of that orderly society.
Yeah.
It is a deeply unsettling scene that it just feels entirely out of place.
Yeah, it really does.
And yet, as we are going to explore today, it is becoming an increasingly common reality in some of the most developed cities in the world.
It's a massive shift.
It is. So today's deep dive unpacks a truly gritty, eye-opening investigation by the Dutch journalistic program Pointer.
Broadcast by KRO-NCRV.
Exactly, KRO-NCRV. Their journalists went directly onto the streets of major Dutch cities to uncover a hidden, parallel world. The dark, rapidly expanding ecosystem of the current crack epidemic. Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission today is to truly understand the mechanics of this crisis.
We really need to break it down.
Yeah, we want to figure out how a chemical reaction that provides a high lasting a mere 20 seconds.
Just 20 seconds.
Can ruthlessly hijack a human life. We're going to examine the aggressive, hyper-commercial business model that dealers use to keep users hooked.
The economics of it are terrifying.
And we need to understand why the streets of major cities in the Netherlands are suddenly looking like they've regressed right back to the darkest days of the 1980s.
What's fascinating here is that the journalists at Pointer didn't just look at this from a distance.
Right.
They mapped out a sprawling, deeply interconnected ecosystem. This is not a simple narrative of, bad choices or moral failings.
No, not at all.
We are looking at a catastrophic collision of advanced neurochemistry, highly predatory street-level economics, and immense societal blind spots.
It's a perfect storm.
It really is. It is a system designed to prey on profound human vulnerability and untreated trauma. The investigation takes us right down to the pavement.
Yeah, they did direct interviews, right?
Exactly. Direct interviews with 40 different users, and it even pulls back the curtain to interview the active dealers who are actively engineering this crisis.
Wow.
It is a stark reminder that an epidemic of this visibility does not just happen organically. It is meticulously driven by the pharmacology of the drug.
And those corporate tactics.
Right, the calculated, almost corporate tactics of those selling it.
Yeah.
Perfectly exploiting the existing fractures in modern social safety nets.
And to you, our listener, welcome to the conversation. We promise you a thorough, multi-perspective look at this crisis.
Without getting bogged down in all the academic jargon.
Exactly. We are going to bring you the voices and the raw realities from the streets. We want you to see the big picture, but also feel the impact of the individual stories.
Because the scale of this is staggering.
It is. What is happening right now on the streets of cities like Rotterdam, Amsterdam, The Hague, and Utrecht is nothing short of a visible public crisis.
Highly visible.
According to the Pointer investigation, an estimated 30,000 people in the Netherlands are now using what is locally called cooked cocaine.
Which is an important distinction.
Right. Just to clarify the terminology for a second, when the journalists refer to cooked coke, they are talking about what most of the English-speaking world knows as crack.
Yeah, crack cocaine.
It's a literal translation of the Dutch street slang gekookte kook, referring to the manufacturing process. But 30,000 people.
This huge number.
For a country of that size, it's staggering. And what struck me most while reviewing the findings wasn't just the number, but the extreme visual reality of it.
Oh, it's not hidden.
No, this isn't happening behind closed doors in abandoned, boarded-up buildings. The reporters documented users and dealers operating entirely out in the open.
In places like Museum Park.
Yes, Rotterdam's Museum Park.
Yeah.
How does a highly regulated society even arrive at a point where this is happening in a public park?
That visual reality, that extreme, unavoidable visibility, is exactly what makes this so jarring. particularly for anyone familiar with the urban history of these cities.
Right, because this isn't the first time they've dealt with this.
Exactly. This open drug use is a stark, terrifying regression. To understand the gravity of what the Pointer journalists are showing us, we have to look back at the 1980s and the 1990s.
The heroin era.
Yes. During that era, the Netherlands, and particularly cities like Rotterdam and Utrecht, were in the absolute grips of a massive heroin epidemic.
It was notoriously bad.
The investigation explicitly references some incredibly infamous historical drug havens that define that era. For instance, there was Perron-Nol or Platform Zero.
Right next to Rotterdam Central Station?
Exactly.
Okay.
This wasn't just a quiet corner. It was an internationally notorious zone where drug use was essentially tolerated in the open.
Just right out there.
Yeah, it was a chaotic, often dangerous environment where hundreds of addicted individuals gathered daily. Similarly, you had Hague in Utrecht.
That sprawling mall complex.
Right, which became a haven for homeless heroin users.
I have actually seen archival photos of those places, and they look like scenes from a dystopian film.
You really do.
Just sheer human misery clustered together in the center of major transit hubs.
It was a profoundly dark era for Dutch urban planning and public health. But here's the crucial context that makes the current situation so heartbreaking. The Dutch authorities didn't just give up back then.
Right, they fought it.
Through decades of incredibly hard work, targeted social policies, aggressive urban redesign, and pioneering public health initiatives.
Like the methadone programs.
Exactly. Methadone programs, safe consumption rooms. They successfully cleaned up those streets. They managed to dismantle those massive open-air drug markets.
It was considered a global success story.
It was globally remarkable in urban rehabilitation. So now, decades later, to see the streets sliding back into that exact same visual chaos,
To see people smoking crack in tram shelters.
it shatters the perceived permanence of that progress.
Yeah.
It is a profound blow to the civic identity of these cities.
Yeah.
It forces the realization that the boulder they pushed up the hill for 30 years is suddenly rolling right back down.
That historical context adds so much weight to the current reality. It's not just a new problem, it's the resurrection of an old ghost that they thought they had vanquished.
Exactly.
And the Pointer investigation gives us these incredible, albeit deeply disturbing observations that really paint a picture of how brazen this new wave has become.
The park scene is wild.
It is. There's a moment where the street journalists are filming in Museum Park in Rotterdam. They're just standing there, quietly observing the dynamics for maybe 30 minutes.
A very short window.
Right. And in that incredibly short window of time, they spot an obvious dealer pacing back and forth. Eventually, this dealer casually crosses a small bridge in the park.
And what happens next is just...
It's a chilling visual of lost autonomy. One by one, a whole trail of addicted users just stands up and follows him over the bridge.
like the Pied Piper.
Like the Pied Piper, it's not a transaction, it's a tether. They are being pulled by their own hijacked neurochemistry across a public park,
In broad daylight.
surrounded by normal city life.
It is a phenomenal observation by the reporters because it perfectly illustrates the power dynamics at play. Those users following the dealer are tethered by an invisible, unbreakable neurological chain.
They can't help it.
They have lost the capacity for independent decision-making in that moment. And the journalists also capture the underlying constant threat of violence that permeates this environment.
The bike incident.
Yes. There is a deeply tense moment described in the investigation where the atmosphere in the park just instantly shifts. The tension spikes out of nowhere. A man casually cycles past the reporters, and he has a large knife drawn.
Just riding a bike.
He is just holding a knife while riding his bike through a heavily populated public space.
Wait, he's just casually biking with a knife in his hand? How do the reporters even react to that?
They actually confront him about it.
Wow.
And his reaction is perhaps the most unsettling part. He doesn't act aggressive when confronted. He just mumbles an apology, claims he forgot he was holding it, and puts it away.
Forgot he was holding a knife.
Right. But that interaction highlights the extreme volatility of the parallel world these individuals are operating in. The rules of normal society are entirely suspended.
Anything could happen.
One moment, it is quiet. And the next, someone in a state of severe paranoia, psychosis, or acute withdrawal could snap.
It's a powder keg.
The reporters themselves note a deep, persistent sense of unease. A gut feeling that they are in an environment where unpredictability is the only constant.
It sounds incredibly tense. The normal rules just do not apply because the people trapped in this cycle are operating under the rules of the drug.
Exactly.
Which brings us to a really important transition point. How did we get back here? To understand the visible street-level problem, we have to look closely at the specific substance driving all of this chaos.
The chemistry.
We need to talk about what crack actually is and the brutal, unforgiving pharmacology and economics behind it.
Yeah, a lot of people have misconceptions.
Right. I think a lot of people have heard the word crack used in movies or pop culture, but the Pointer journalists really break down the physical reality of the street product.
It's a very specific process.
It is essentially cocaine powder that has been mixed with a base, usually something highly caustic, cheap, and readily available, like baking soda or ammonia. This mixture is then literally boiled down until it forms a hard, crystalline rock. Users typically smoke it out of a glass pipe or off a piece of aluminum foil.
And the economics start immediately.
Yes. Here is the initial hook that starts the entire disaster. A small ball of crack, a single hit, costs a mere €5 on the street.
€5. That price point is the absolute bait in the trap.
It's nothing.
It is incredibly low, which completely removes the financial barrier to entry for someone who might be vulnerable, desperate, or just curious. €5 is the price of a fancy coffee.
Yeah.
But to understand why that seemingly insignificant €5 rock is so devastating, we have to move beyond just saying it makes you feel good and dive into the severe neurobiology.
What actually happens in the brain?
Exactly. What happens when that specific chemical smoke hits the lungs? When a person snorts powder cocaine, it takes a little time to cross the mucous membranes in the nose and enter the bloodstream.
The onset is gradual.
Right. But when you smoke cooked cocaine, it goes straight into the lungs. The lungs have a massive surface area of alveoli, allowing the chemical to transfer into the bloodstream and cross the blood-brain barrier almost instantaneously.
Instantaneous.
It hits the brain's receptors with a massive, violent surge of dopamine.
And dopamine is the reward chemical, right?
Yeah.
It's what our brain uses to tell us we did something good for our survival.
Exactly. But we need to understand the scale here. Dopamine is the neurotransmitter responsible for pleasure, reward, and motivation. Yes.
Right.
In a normal human experience, eating a delicious meal, hugging a loved one, accomplishing a difficult task, your brain releases a measured amount of dopamine to reinforce that behavior.
A gentle reward.
Crack cocaine completely short-circuits that system. It forces the brain to dump massive, unnatural reserves of dopamine all at once, while simultaneously blocking the brain from reabsorbing it.
So it just pools there.
The brain is flooded with a euphoric rush, what users call the flash. But here is the terrifying biological catch. That flash, that overwhelming peak of artificial euphoria, only lasts for about 10 to 20 seconds.
10 to 20 seconds. Let's just pause on that.
Yeah.
You pay €5, you get this explosive, reality-altering high, and before you can even truly process the experience, it is gone.
Completely gone.
It just vanishes. And what happens after those 20 seconds?
What happens next is a phenomenon known as dopamine downregulation. Because the brain was just forced to dump its reserves, it is now entirely depleted.
The crash.
The baseline state drops precipitously. The user is plunged into an intense, agonizing physical and psychological crash. And because the brain is highly adaptable, it recognizes that massive surge as the new standard for survival.
Oh, wow.
It literally begins to prune its own dopamine receptors, making it virtually impossible for the user to feel normal joy from everyday activities.
Because normal activities can't compete.
The brain now believes that the only way to survive, the only way to feel anything resembling okay, is to get more of that specific chemical.
That's terrifying.
The survival pathways have been entirely hijacked. The brain now prioritizes crack, the way a starving person prioritizes food, or a drowning person prioritizes oxygen.
That is utterly terrifying. The brain literally rewires itself to believe crack is oxygen. So that €5 price point, it's a complete illusion.
A total illusion.
Because nobody just buys one €5 rock if the high lasts 20 seconds and leaves you feeling like you're suffocating without it.
Precisely. That short duration completely changes the economic math of the addiction.
Yeah.
Because the high is so fleeting, the user's brain immediately screams for more to stave off the crash.
So they buy another.
Let's look at the terrifying math that the Pointer investigation lays out. A single €5 rock might be a tiny fraction of a gram.
Right.
But a heavily addicted user chasing that 20-second flash over and over again throughout a single day might consume anywhere from half a gram to more than 2 full grams a day.
That adds up fast.
So that €5 entry fee rapidly spirals into spending €100 a day. That is €700 a week.
Oh my God.
That is roughly €3,000 a month.
€3,000 a month just to maintain a baseline of chemical dependency. That is more than the average monthly salary for many working professionals.
And now, consider who we are talking about in this street-level ecosystem. Many of these users interviewed by Pointer are homeless.
They don't have incomes.
They do not have jobs. They do not have savings accounts or credit cards. They are entirely disconnected from the formal economy.
Right.
For a destitute individual living in a park or a shelter, coming up with €3,000 a month in cash is a monumental, seemingly impossible task.
It's a full-time job just to survive.
That terrifying mathematical reality dictates every single waking second of their lives.
Yeah.
From the moment the sun comes up, their central nervous system is in a state of alarm.
Wow.
Their heart rate elevates, and the hunt begins. The hunt for cash, the hunt for the dealer, the hunt for a safe place to use the pipe.
Exhausting.
It is an exhausting, relentless 247 cycle of sheer survival driven purely by hijacked neurochemistry.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. The grip that this neurochemistry has on the user is almost hard to comprehend until you look at the science behind the cravings.
The subconscious triggers.
Yes. The investigation details this deeply unsettling power of environmental cues. They cite studies regarding how the addicted brain reacts to visual stimuli. And this isn't just about feeling a little tempted when you see someone else using. The researchers take someone who is addicted to crack, and they show them an image of cocaine.
But not for long.
No, they flash it on a screen for just a fraction of a second, so incredibly fast that the conscious mind doesn't even register seeing it.
A subliminal flash.
Exactly. The person couldn't tell you what was on the screen. It is entirely subconscious. Yet when they monitor the brain activity of that user with an fMRI, their brain's basal ganglia and reward centers activate exactly as if the physical drug were sitting right there in the room.
That is incredible.
A purely subconscious flicker of an image triggers a massive, involuntary neurological response and uncontrollable cravings.
That finding is profoundly disturbing because it completely redefines our societal understanding of self-control, willpower, and addiction.
Right. Takes willpower completely out of the equation.
It means the brain has been so thoroughly conditioned by those extreme dopamine surges that it reacts reflexively, entirely involuntarily, to anything even remotely associated with the drug.
Any cue at all.
A certain smell in a stairwell, the specific architecture of a street corner, the distinct click of a lighter, these aren't just passing memory.
Commands.
To the addicted brain. They are literal neurological commands to consume. It highlights how utterly defenseless a recovering addict can be when they are placed back into an environment where they previously used.
Yeah.
The conscious mind, the prefrontal cortex, might desperately want to stay clean. The person might have every intention of staying sober.
But the brain is working against them.
But the subconscious, primitive brain is firing off chemical signals, demanding the drug before the person is even aware of what is happening.
It really reframes the whole concept of relapse. It's not a moral failure, it's a biological ambush.
A biological ambush is a perfect way to put it.
Which brings us to the human element. We have to pivot from the chemical hook and the fMRI scans to the actual human beings caught on the line.
To 40 users.
Right. The Pointer journalists didn't just observe from afar or read medical journals. They spoke directly to 40 different users out on the streets.
That takes a lot of trust building.
It does. And the insights from these extensive interviews focus heavily on the psychological drivers of the addiction. You know, there is often a societal stereotype that drug users are just hedonists.
Out there partying.
Yeah, chasing a good time, acting selfishly. But the reality painted by these 40 individuals is incredibly grim.
Very dark.
They described crack not as a party drug, not as a tool for fun, but as a desperate flight from reality.
A flight from reality.
It is a highly effective, deeply destructive tool used to numb unbearable emotional pain.
Yes, the recurring, overwhelming theme in almost all of these interviews is profound trauma. These individuals are not chasing joy. They are seeking oblivion.
They just want to turn it off.
They want to turn off the horrific memories, the systemic failures, the childhood abuse, the paralyzing grief. The Pointer investigation refers to this tragic illusion as the Fata Morgana, or the mirage.
The mirage.
The drug promises this 20-second oasis of relief, a brief shining moment where you feel invincible, protected, and the pain entirely disappears.
But it's a lie.
But the reality it delivers is a deeply lonely, incredibly destructive, and surprisingly monotonous existence.
Monotonous.
Your entire life, your whole world, shrinks down to the size of a glass pipe. Every relationship, every ambition, every shred of personal dignity is sacrificed to maintain the mirage.
We see that mirage so painfully clearly in the story of a user named Sindra, who goes by the street name Charlie.
That story is tough.
His story just broke my heart. He tells the reporters that he didn't even start using heavy drugs in his youth. He was 27 years old when he first started snorting cocaine.
That's quite late compared to some.
It is. And what triggered it? He found out his father was severely sick. And then at the age of 30, when his father's illness became terminal, the pain was so overwhelming that he escalated to smoking crack.
Just looking for a stronger anesthetic.
Exactly. He is remarkably articulate about his motives. He explicitly says he did it because nothing else worked. The alcohol didn't numb the pain enough. Snorting powder didn't numb it enough.
You needed it all gone.
He just wanted to feel absolutely nothing. He used crack as an anesthetic to completely obliterate the grief of watching his father die.
Sindra's story is a textbook example of using profound chemical intoxication as a coping mechanism for acute, unmanageable trauma. He didn't have the psychological tools or the societal support to process that grief, so he outsourced it to a chemical. But what makes his story even more tragic is what happens years later.
Yeah, the recovery part.
He actually manages to achieve the impossible. He gets clean. He goes through the agonizing withdrawal. He fights his own rewired brain. And he stays clean for 7 long years.
7 years. That is massive.
7 years of rebuilding his life, his identity, his autonomy. And then, after all that time, he relapses.
And the reason he relapses is exactly what we were just talking about with the environmental cues.
Yep.
After 7 years of hard work, the social safety net places him into a housing facility where other residents were actively using.
It's unconscionable.
How does that even happen? If the municipality knows he just got out of a 7-year recovery, why would the system place him in an environment where active use is happening right outside his door? Is that a funding issue or just profound negligence?
It is a tragic symptom of systemic paralysis and a severe housing crisis. Social housing in these cities is incredibly scarce.
Right.
Municipalities are overwhelmed, and they often group individuals with complex needs into whatever facilities have open beds, regardless of the nuanced recovery needs of the individual.
They just need a place to put people.
So you take Sindra, a man whose brain was fundamentally altered by crack, and you put him in a hallway that smells like crack.
Oh, man.
He is surrounded by people talking about it. The visual cues are everywhere. The stress of the environment is high. Connect this back to the fMRI study.
The subconscious triggers.
It is almost a biological inevitability that he will relapse.
Yeah.
The conscious mind that stayed clean for 7 years is completely overpowered by the primitive, rewired reward center of the brain being bombarded with environmental triggers.
He never had a chance.
He tells the reporter something incredibly haunting. He says that once you touch it, you are forever vulnerable. It is a demon that always waits for a moment of weakness or a lapse in environmental safety. The system failed him by ignoring the neurobiology of his addiction.
It's devastating. And then there's the story of Gerard. Gerard is a man who suffered severe, unspeakable abuse in his past.
Yeah.
He tells the journalist that he suffers from intensely realistic nightmares. I try to imagine what realistic nightmares mean for a person who is already sleeping rough on the streets.
Completely vulnerable to the elements and to violence.
Exactly. He is completely transparent about his motives. He uses crack strictly to numb himself, to escape the horrors of his own memory so he can survive the night.
It's pure self-medication.
And what is so striking about Gerard is his sheer desperation for stability. He insists that if he just had a stable home, a safe place to close a door, lock it, and feel secure, he would quit the drug. He uses this incredibly visceral, unforgettable phrase. He tells the reporters he would chop his hands off for a house.
I would chop my hands off for a house.
Yeah.
That phrase should haunt any urban planner or policymaker listening to those interviews.
Really?
It perfectly encapsulates the pure agony of his situation. Gerard doesn't love the drug. He actively hates the life it forces him to live.
He wants out.
But the alternative, facing the raw, untreated trauma of his past, while trying to survive on the streets, constantly hypervigilant, constantly unsafe, is simply too much for his nervous system to bear. The crack is a horrific, destructive medication for a dual disease of profound trauma and chronic homelessness. Gerard's testimony completely destroys the myth of the hedonistic drug user.
Yeah, he's not partying.
He is a man in agony, self-medicating, with the only tool available to him because society has not provided a safe harbor where he can actually begin to heal.
It is a profound lack of dignity. He is essentially chemically sedating himself just to exist in public spaces. And speaking of dignity, the story of a user named O.J. Ari really highlights how far the drug strips that away.
Right down to the microscopic level.
Yes. O.J. Ari is actually a success story in the investigation. He has been clean for a year, which is a massive victory.
Huge.
But he agrees to take the reporters back to his old apartment, which he refers to as his crack flat. He describes the atmosphere of that time, how the apartment was just covered in the residue and the chaos of addiction. But the detail that really sticks out, the one that truly makes your stomach turn, is when he talks about his guests.
The crumb search.
Right. He says other addicted users would come over, and when the drug ran out, they wouldn't leave. They would literally sit on his dirty floor for hours on end, desperately scanning the carpet, picking through dust, searching for dropped crumbs of crack.
That specific behavior is the ultimate manifestation of the 20-second hook. Think about the psychological state required to do that.
It's degrading.
The brain is screaming so loudly for dopamine, the survival pathway is so utterly hijacked that it overrides all human pride, all sense of decorum, all basic hygiene.
Yeah.
You have adult human beings, individuals who previously had careers, families, hobbies, and self-respect, reduced to crawling on a dirty floor.
For hours.
They're meticulously picking through dirt and debris, hoping against hope to find a tiny microscopic chemical crumb that might give them one more fleeting flash.
Oh, it's so sad.
The indignity of the crumb search is an incredibly powerful visual metaphor for what the drug does to the human spirit. It hollows the person out entirely, leaving behind nothing but a biological machine programmed to relentlessly seek the next hit.
I want you, the listener, to really put yourself in that headspace for a moment. Imagine the desperate lengths someone would go to when their brain is demanding 3,000 euros a month just to keep them functioning at a baseline level.
$3,000 a month.
You are homeless, you are traumatized, you are crawling on the floor for crumbs, and you wake up knowing you need 100 euros in cash today, or you will face agonizing withdrawal.
Every single day.
Where does that money come from? This leads us directly into the darkest part of this parallel world. The hustle.
The economics of survival.
How do users fund this massive habit when they are locked out of the normal economy? The Pointer journalists map this out, and the methods range from the seemingly mundane, like relentless begging at train stations, to severe, systematic theft, all the way down to extreme exploitation and survival sex work.
This is where we see the brutal economic reality of the drug intersect with the moral boundaries of the individual. Crack forces people to cross lines they never, ever thought they would cross. As we discussed, the addiction strips away dignity and self-worth, and it replaces those core human traits entirely with the primal need for the next 20-second flash.
The moral compass just breaks.
It doesn't just spin, it completely breaks. The user becomes capable of actions that their sober self would find absolutely abhorrent, purely because the biological imperative to avoid the crash and achieve the flash becomes the singular, overriding, driving force of their existence.
It's survival mode.
The brain treats the drug as survival, and a human being will do almost anything to survive.
And we see that criminal extreme perfectly illustrated in the story of a user named Ilja. Ilja's story is staggering. He admits to spending a total of 14 years of his life in prison.
14 years?
14 years, gone. And what did he do to earn that much time behind bars? He systematically stole. But we aren't talking about pocketing a candy bar or shoplifting a jacket here.
No.
Ilja admits to the reporters that over the course of his addiction, he stole an estimated 1.8 million euros worth of goods.
That number is almost difficult to process. 1.8 million euros in stolen merchandise.
Exactly. I had to reread that figure. How is it logistically possible to steal that much?
It's a massive operation.
He describes his routine to the journalists. For 2 solid years, every single day, he would walk into major Dutch supermarkets, specifically Albert Heijn and Jumbo.
Just right through the front doors.
He would fill up entire shopping carts with crates of expensive groceries and then just confidently, brazenly wheel them right out the front door. Every day, for 2 years.
Unbelievable.
He had to fence those stolen goods to convert them into cash, all entirely to fund his crack habit.
Ilja's story is staggering on multiple levels. First, as you mentioned, the sheer logistical audacity of stealing nearly 2 million euros worth of groceries.
Takes a lot of nerve.
It requires a brazenness, a hyper-focused adrenaline that is almost hard to comprehend, but it also speaks to a bizarre kind of dark discipline. He treated major theft as a full-time, highly demanding job.
Because it was.
Because to his addicted brain, it was his job. It was the only way to meet the 3,000 euro a month quota his survival pathways demanded.
Yeah.
And we really need to look at the massive societal cost here. It's not just the 1.8 million euros in retail shrinkage for the supermarkets. Think about the cost to the judicial system.
Oh, absolutely.
14 years of incarceration, the cost of police time, the investigations, the court time, the prison administration, the parole officers.
Billions of euros.
All of this societal machinery churning, millions of euros in public funds spent, simply because one man's brain requires a 20-second dopamine hit every few hours.
It's a terrible cycle.
It is an incredibly inefficient, financially destructive cycle that perpetually punishes the behavior without ever curing the underlying biological demand.
It is a massive, exhausting drain on the system. But as destructive and costly as Ilja's story of theft is, the investigation uncovers an even darker hustle.
Yes.
One that preys on the absolute most vulnerable users. And that is the grim reality of survival sex work.
This is the bleakest part.
It really is. The reporters speak with a woman named Aneska, who started working at a young age on the Keilerweg. Now, for some historical context, the Keilerweg is a notorious street in Rotterdam that was once a designated zone for street prostitution.
Heavily populated by deeply addicted women.
Right. Aneska's story brings to light the deeply insidious, predatory nature of the dealers themselves and how they manipulate withdrawal to exact maximum control.
Yes, and this is where the street economics of the drug become truly monstrous. The Pointer investigation details how dealers actively weaponize the physical agony of addiction against women.
They know exactly what they're doing.
A hit of crack might cost 10 euros, but a dealer knows that a woman in the throes of severe withdrawal, shaking, paranoid, desperate, might not have 10 euros in cash.
Right.
So the dealer demands sex instead of money. And here's the deeply psychological trap that Aneska's story highlights. Once a vulnerable woman crosses that line, once she trades her bodily autonomy for a 10-euro rock to stave off the agonizing crash, a fundamental fracture occurs in her psyche.
It breaks her.
Her spirit breaks. The profound shame, the degradation, and the trauma of that act reinforce the need to numb herself even further.
It becomes a vicious, self-perpetuating cycle of trauma and chemical sedation. The cure for the shame of what she just did is the very drug that forced her to do it.
Precisely. And the dealers are fully aware of this psychology. They are master manipulators of human misery. They know that once she has crossed that boundary, the psychological barrier is gone.
It's the new normal for her.
The indignity is established as the new baseline. They know she will do it again. They have successfully transformed a human being into a completely compliant, desperate asset.
It's enslavement.
It is not just about the transactional exchange of sex for drugs. It is about the systematic, intentional dismantling of a person's agency to ensure they remain a permanent subservient customer. It is a form of economic and psychological enslavement.
It is sickening. It truly is hard to listen to, and it shifts our focus entirely. Because up until now, we have spent a lot of time talking about the desperate buyers, the people trapped in this cycle, crawling on floors or stealing groceries.
Right, the demand side.
But this isn't just a story about demand. The Pointer investigation makes it abundantly clear that this is a story about a highly calculated, aggressive, and predatory supply.
The dealers.
Which brings us to the dealers themselves. The journalists dive into what we can only call the predator's playbook. The tactics these street dealers use are shockingly sophisticated. They operate with a hyper-commercial, corporate-style marketing mindset that would rival any Silicon Valley executive. They send out push notifications via text message.
Like an app?
Yeah. They offer promotional free testers to entice new users or bring back old ones. Yeah. And most despicably, they actively, intentionally stalk users who they know are trying to get clean.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the parallels between these street-level crack dealers and aggressive tech or marketing executives are undeniable and chilling.
Absolutely.
Both deeply understand the metrics of customer retention. Both know exactly how to manipulate the dopamine systems of their end users.
Yeah.
But the dealers apply this knowledge with a terrifying lack of morality.
No ethics at all.
Imagine a user like Sindra, who we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Let's say he gets out of rehab, he is in a shelter, he is trying with every ounce of his willpower to stay clean.
Doing everything right.
The dealer, who tracks his customers closely, notices he hasn't bought anything in a few days. So what does the dealer do? He doesn't just write off the lost revenue and move on.
No, he goes after him.
He physically goes to the user's house or the facility where they are staying and literally leaves a free rock of crack on their roof, in their mailbox, or on their windowsill.
They just drop a chemical bomb right on their doorstep, knowing full well the person is trying to recover.
Exactly. They know that simply seeing the physical drug, as we discussed with the fMRI studies and subconscious visual cues, is often more than enough to trigger a full-blown neurological relapse.
It bypasses the conscious choice.
They are actively, maliciously sabotaging recovery because a recovering addict hurts their bottom line. The investigation even notes that these dealers offer bounty rewards.
It's a referral program.
It's a literal referral program. If a user provides the phone number of another potential buyer, the dealer gives them a free hit. It is a viral marketing scheme built entirely on human misery.
The reporters actually got access to the phones of some users and showed the text messages these dealers broadcast. And they are chilling in their casual promotional tone.
What do they say?
They read things like gratis tester SOS, meaning free tester of cocaine, or just free. Another common one is beller is sneller, which translates to caller is faster, encouraging immediate action.
Incredible.
It is just rapid-fire aggressive direct marketing beamed straight into the pockets of highly vulnerable, neurologically compromised individuals. And the Pointer journalists managed to do something quite rare.
Oh, the interview.
Yes, they actually secured an interview with an active dealer, an anonymous dealer who admits he started in the trade when he was just 15 years old.
A teenager.
And his justification for what he does is an absolute masterclass in twisted, sociopathic logic.
The interview with this dealer, who proudly states that he cooks his own crack, is one of the most revealing and disturbing parts of the entire investigation.
It really is.
It exposes the profound cognitive dissonance required to operate in this space day after day. He tells the reporters that he occasionally smokes his own product, and he justifies it by comparing himself to a baker tasting his dough.
A baker.
He claims he just wants to make sure the quality is good for his customers.
A baker. He is comparing cooking a highly addictive, life-destroying chemical with ammonia to baking a loaf of bread. The level of delusion is incredible.
It is an incredible rationalization. He frames his destruction as artisanal craftsmanship. But he goes even further into this illusion. He claims that he is providing a friendship service.
Friendship service.
He literally calls his crack good medicine for sick people.
Yeah.
He positions himself not as a predator, but as a caretaker, a rogue pharmacist providing a necessary service to a marginalized community in pain. And he uses a very common, highly effective psychological defense mechanism: downward social comparison. He argues aggressively that he is morally superior to other dealers on the street.
Why, because he doesn't cut it.
Exactly. Because other dealers might cut their cocaine with deadly synthetic substances like fentanyl or crystal meth to increase their profit margins.
Yeah.
Because his product is pure crack, he genuinely believes he is the ethical actor in this scenario.
So in his mind, he is the good guy crack dealer. He's providing a pure product, so he's practically a public servant.
Exactly. He has built an impenetrable moral fortress in his own mind to protect himself from the reality of the devastation he causes. He ends the interview by saying he views the whole epidemic, the whole street scene, as just a game that everyone wants to play.
The game.
And if people want to play, he is simply going to play along and provide the pieces. That word game is so profoundly telling. It completely strips away the human suffering, the death, the trauma, the ruined lives of people like Ilja or Ineska.
It trivializes everything.
It reduces the entire public health crisis to a transactional sport where he is simply the winning player. It is a chilling detachment from reality.
So if you are a city official looking at this, what does this all mean for the people who are actually tasked with stopping this crisis?
They're overwhelmed.
You have an incredibly addictive chemical hook that rewires the brain. You have users driven to absolute desperation by severe trauma and exclusion from the formal economy. And you have an army of highly organized sociopathic dealers treating it like a viral marketing game.
It's a hydra.
How does a city even begin to fight back against a perfect storm like that? This leads us to our final section. Systemic paralysis.
Yeah.
The investigation looks closely at the response from local municipalities, the police forces, and the social workers on the ground. And honestly, looking at the evidence, the approach currently feels like a hopeless, exhausting game of playing whack-a-mole on the streets.
Whack-a-mole is exactly right.
They are just moving the problem from one corner to the next without ever actually solving the root cause.
The paralysis we are seeing stems from the fundamental limitations of municipal power and short-term political thinking. A city government's primary instinct, and really its primary mandate from its voters, is to maintain public order.
Keep the streets clean.
When residents complain about trash, discarded needles, aggressive behavior, property crime, and a general feeling of unsafety in their parks, the city's immediate reflex is to clean up the physical space.
Out of sight, out of mind.
They deploy police, they issue fines, they redesign the architecture to be hostile. But this raises an essential glaring question. Does making a park physically uncomfortable for a drug user actually cure their addiction?
Of course not.
Of course not. Strict enforcement of public space laws does absolutely nothing to alter the rewired neurochemistry of the addicts, nor does it address the deep trauma driving their use. It merely displaces them.
We see this displacement strategy perfectly illustrated in the investigation's focus on the Park in Amsterdam.
Yeah, that's a classic example.
The reporters note that a specific section of this park was once notoriously known as Crack Alley. You had dozens of people sitting there, 24 hours a day, openly smoking crack, completely visible to families and residents.
Right out in the open.
So, what was the city's grand systemic solution to this complex neurological and social crisis? They came in and physically removed the park benches.
Just took the benches away?
They cut down the surrounding bushes so people couldn't hide in the foliage. And they parked a user bus nearby. Essentially a mobile, supervised facility where homeless addicts are permitted to smoke inside, out of public view.
It is the architectural equivalent of sweeping dirt under a rug. Removing a bench doesn't remove the addiction. It just forces the exhausted addict to find a new place to sit down, perhaps a tram shelter or a metro station.
Right, they just move a block away.
Now, to be fair, the user bus is a pragmatic harm reduction strategy. It keeps the discarded paraphernalia off the street, it reduces public nuisance, and it provides a vital touch point for social or medical care.
Sure, it helps the immediate surroundings.
But we must recognize it for what it is. It's a containment strategy, not a cure. It manages the visibility of the problem without solving it. And the Pointer journalists witnessed the exact same whack-a-mole effect in Rotterdam.
Back at Museum Park.
The police heavily enforced the rules in the museum park, conducting sweeps and clearing out the visible users. But street workers like Deborah and Elaine, who the journalists shadow extensively, note that the problem didn't vanish.
Where did they go?
The users simply migrated. On Friday nights, when the park is heavily policed, they move to the busy metro stations to beg from the partygoers.
Just following the crowd.
They follow the foot traffic and the money. As long as the biological demand remains, the market will simply relocate to wherever the enforcement is temporarily weakest.
It has to be incredibly demoralizing for the people on the front lines, the social workers, who see this cycle repeating endlessly.
It burns them out.
The investigation introduces us to a man named Gijs, a field worker in The Hague. His job sounds absolutely grueling. He literally searches through the dark, freezing woods at night, using a flashlight, trying to find deeply marginalized homeless users who are sleeping rough in makeshift camps.
That is tough work.
He is out there in the dark, trying to bring a warm coat or a container of food to people like Jacob, a hardened, long-term homeless user who acts as a sort of spokesperson for the community living in the woods.
Gijs is a profound, deeply sympathetic figure in this investigation because he completely embodies the deep pessimism and the crushing compassion fatigue of those working on the front lines of this crisis.
You can hear the exhaustion.
When the reporters ask him about a potential solution to the epidemic, Gijs is starkly, brutally honest. He admits he has no overarching solution.
None at all.
He looks at the macro level, the aggressive marketing of the dealers, the incredibly cheap supply, the devastated, traumatized users, the lack of housing, and he sees a system that is fundamentally broken and actively deteriorating.
He's just putting out tiny fires.
He has resigned himself to a very micro level of impact. He knows he cannot cure Jacob's addiction tonight. He knows he cannot fix the national housing crisis. But he can give Jacob a coat so he doesn't freeze to death in the woods.
It's pure humanity.
It is a beautiful, deeply compassionate act of human solidarity, but it underscores the terrifying systemic paralysis. When your dedicated frontline workers have given up on solving the problem and are merely trying to keep people alive in the woods with winter coats, society is losing the war.
It is a perfect, devastating storm. You have the highly addictive, brain-altering chemistry of the 20-second flash.
The neurobiology.
You have predatory, corporate-minded dealers dropping free drugs on roofs to sabotage recovery.
Yeah.
And you have a municipal system that is so overwhelmed and limited in its scope that it can only focus on cutting down bushes and handing out coats in the dark.
It's systemic failure on every level.
It brings us to a heavy but incredibly necessary conclusion. Let's distill the main takeaways for you, our listener, from this massive pointer investigation. What we have learned today is that crack is a devastatingly efficient drug. It hijacks the brain's survival pathways and reward centers for a fleeting 20 seconds, leaving behind a crater of physical and psychological desperation.
A crater is right.
This biological vulnerability is actively fueled by a ruthless, predatory street economy that forces already traumatized people into extreme criminality, like Ilja stealing millions of euros in groceries, or into horrific exploitation like Aneska surviving on the Kiloweg.
And the cities just watch it happen.
Meanwhile, society remains paralyzed, struggling to find any meaningful response beyond hostile architecture, pushing the problem from the park to the metro station, and hoping it stays out of sight.
And this brings us to a final profound thought that I want you to mull over as you go about your day. We've discussed the science of how this addiction is so powerful that merely seeing a subconscious fractional second image of the drug can light up the brain's reward centers,
bypassing conscious thought entirely.
We have seen how street dealers actively weaponize that exact biology, literally dropping free drugs on a recovering addict's doorstep to trigger an involuntary relapse.
Yeah.
If human neurochemistry can be hijacked this completely, if the survival instinct can be entirely rewired to prioritize a chemical over food or shelter, at what point does free will cease to exist for these individuals?
That's the real question.
And if we acknowledge that their agency has been chemically robbed, how should a truly compassionate, rational society redesign its laws, its justice system, and its social safety nets? Are we currently punishing criminals making bad choices, or are we punishing people who have literally lost the biological capacity to choose otherwise?
That is a heavy, essential question to leave on. It completely challenges how we view public order and personal responsibility. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into a really difficult but absolutely vital topic.
It's been an important one.
It is not an easy world to look at, but truly understanding the mechanics of it is the first step toward demanding better, more effective solutions. Keep questioning the systems around you, stay curious, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.